Chris, don't be shy. You can come in. You can come and see us, Chris. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 5:30, and we will call our workshop session to order. First up on our list is discussion regarding status updates and engineering projects and studies related to pre-treatment improvement, injection site improvement, and supplemental and alternative water source study.
Mayor and Council, Jason Jones is prepared to provide you his report.
Good evening. Make sure you guys can hear me. All right, glad to be here. Everybody's doing okay. I put together a few talking points for the discussion, and that's all they are, is talking points. So if you've got questions, don't hesitate to ask. I want to make sure we're all on a similar page, and we've got a few important things to convey. I don't want them to get lost. So, we'll give the video a minute here.
I think something got disconnected.
Okay. Well, we'll keep moving. Yeah, Becky told me that you got a memorandum that looks like this in front of you. We'll just go through this. That's all right. So Finley asked me to talk about 3 different projects. The first on the list is the wastewater treatment plant. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just some updates. And every time I pick this project up, I got to look back at where we've been because it's been going on for quite some time. So, as some background for council, the engineering report that we first did on this project was in February of 21. It identified what the city needed to do at its current site to treat Ajinomoto's waste stream. Since that time, we've been in several meetings with Ajinomoto, myself, city staff, and mayor. And during the period, there was an industrial rate contract that defined the fees that the city charged Ajinomoto for pre-treatment of their waste. That had expired in April of 2023. That was kind of a big moment there because at that time the city elected to enforce its sewer ordinance and not work under a special contract. And in the summer of 23, last time we talked about this with council, myself, we adopted some surcharges that were calculated that are based on the effluent quality and volume. And since that time, the city has been charging them monthly surcharges, and they're been significant enough to get Ajinomoto's attention. And they've gone through an analysis on their end, gone through a couple of engineers on their end. And the latest round was in October of this year. We met with their engineering team, who seems pretty capable, and they are proposing to do some on-site pre-treatment. They're adjacent to their plant in downtown, which in the world of worlds, that's what's done most of the time. Most industries are in control of their own pre-treatment, and if they exceed requirements that the city sets for receipt at their wastewater plant, they charge surcharges, kind of like what they're doing now. But their hope is if they build something on site, they won't be paying the surcharges anymore. And so the good news is they've engaged us in the process and are not doing it in a vacuum. And so we provided comments on their plans and some concerns, one of which, of course, is odor, given the location of the site. And there's some ways to address the odor. We just want to make sure everybody is on the same page. Another concern is maintenance of the facility. They're not wastewater operators, and so we're making sure that we set this thing up so that they're responsible for it. And the best way to do that is if this facility shuts down, they don't have a way to bypass, and it shuts the plant down. That has been my recommendation, so that everything that goes out of that plant has to go through this pre-treatment stream before it gets to the city. If we give them the option to do something else, I'm afraid you'll be back where you are now. Anyhow, we've got another meeting in about a week with their engineering team. Work on.
On the, because it is like right next to them, and they have that land, that big a lot. I am concerned about the odor and the aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, did we have any idea like what the place will look like or how big it's gonna be?
I think most of the process they're going to put inside of a building, which will help contain odors and control the odors. You know, I don't have many details yet about what that's going to look like. They don't have a lot of good options for where they're going to build this thing. I don't think it's going to be a huge footprint for what they're talking about.
How much pressure is this gonna take off of our wastewater treatment plant within doing?
It could be significant. You know, your wastewater plant's flowing at about a third of its volumetric capacity, but you know, you're 80% of your organic loading on that plant. So you'd have a significant impact on the city. You'd have an ability to take trains of your plant down for maintenance, which you have not had that ability to do in the past because of the loads that you're seeing from Ajinomoto.
In your opinion, are they on the right track to do what we need them to do? Obviously, you have another meeting, you said November 19th. Do you suspect that they're going to give you satisfactory information, or are you kind of on the fence with where they're sitting?
I've been the most encouraged that I've been in the last 5 years working with this group. Their current engineer is saying the right things. What they've committed to giving us this month, first part of November, is a preliminary engineering report from their team with costs and details about what it is they're going to accomplish, which would be enough for us to review and be comfortable with the project before they move forward. So.
In your opinion, are we under a timeline that this has to be done by a certain, say, year or two, or we look at to have a disaster situation on our hands, or is there any timeline there constraints that you're concerned about?
I think that if the city were growing faster, you'd be in more of a crunch. But I think the biggest impact now is your ability to serve growth, you know, for the rest of your customer base. And so you have 2 years, you have 5 years, and also the equipment at the plant. I think the city's doing a great job of maintaining what it has. So the sky's not falling, but if you had a big development come in, another 500 lots or 1,000 lots, or, you know, something significant, it could be a real problem. In terms
What is their
of
time frame?
faster. What is their timeline?
Mm.
We asked them that question. We'll know more after next week. They seem to be trying to move pretty aggressively about allocating funding. And they've communicated to us that building something on their own property is a lot easier for them to channel funding from their
Right, from the outside.
corporate offices, which are in Tokyo, I believe.
I think the other comment that was made is that the 30% design PER allows them to go to Tokyo and ask for the funding. So it's a milestone to secure funding, and at that point, it's hopefully commencement of final design and construction.
Do you think this building is going to be across the street, or is it going to be in that kind of that back parking lot? Do we have any idea where they want to put that building to contain the odor and the attractants that they need?
What they suggested to us was on the between 3rd and 4th Street. So there's an empty lot there. There's always trucks parked on it behind the county annex building.
southwest corner of Hackberry and 3rd.
So 19th is critical then to you, for your vision to come back to us and say, looks like they're going to do and same and proceeding properly, or we have a problem.
I believe so. And honestly, it's probably next year whenever they get funding allocated to do what they need to do.
And then you had said, I remember when we were talking about this a long time ago, we talked about it, it's like a reverse type process or something different. Are they going with that process that most?
They are. It's an air flotation type of treatment process that it's like an upside down clarifier almost. Where some of the things they're trying to separate floats to the top, and some of it sinks to the bottom, and they kind of take the part off the middle and discharge to the city. There's obviously a lot of things we have got to vet with them, concerns, but nothing that cannot be vetted, I believe. And yeah, okay. And it's not uncommon for an industry to do this sort of thing. They're used to it. They do it at other places, other cities. So it's not the first time Anthony has had to do this. Okay. All right.
Move on to the next one.
The next one is your entry points for your water system at Highway 190 and Highway 580. There's two of them. The 190 side is the largest one. It's got a 20-inch concrete main coming into town, and 580 is a 16-inch concrete main. And this is a project that we identified, and prior engineers have also identified it for the city. We spoke to it in a November 22 study and had a budget item in there for that effort. The biggest thing that needs to happen is the city is managing some chemical injection vaults that are kind of retrofitted on these concrete lines. And chemicals are being injected into a high pressure line, particularly at 190. It's causing some real safety hazards concerns for the workers. So a new vault with a new chemical injection is what we had proposed as part of the study. And we were going to put that in the right of way in terms of just saving money. I think some of this got budgeted. We were talking to the city in summer 2024, updated some budgets. When we really sat down and started getting in the weeds on this project after a request for proposals in August of this year, we recognized that TxDOT's widening highways all over the place. And you're really exposed if you put this vault in the right of way in terms of a widening of a highway. You put $1 million in the right of way, and then you might be doing it again. No telling how long. So there's some benefits to moving this on the private property, which adds some piping to the project. We also got into the chemical injection buildings. I don't know if you guys have seen them. They're these tiny little postage stamp buildings that the city built 10 years ago or so. Okay. They functioned. The concrete foundation is literally on the property line now, and it's up against a property owner. There's not good access into these buildings. They're actually the city's on the neighbor's property just out of goodwill to get into these buildings quite often, particularly on 190. There's some safety issues, compliance issues with the chemicals. They've got ammonia in the buildings and chlorine in the buildings and the feed pumps in the buildings. Per the TCEQ regulations, all these things are supposed to be in separate rooms for safety of the operator. Kudos to your city staff because they've been making this work, and they're safety conscious. They go in there and they fix lines when they're perceived to be leaking before they're leaking, before there's a problem. You guys are taking care of the problem. That's not going to work forever. And so the suggestion was made on this new property to also build a new chemical building that's got multiple rooms to house these chemicals. And do it as a single effort so that when we walk away, you don't have to touch this thing again. Of course, that's a different animal, scope of work, and it's going to drive the cost up. And so what we put together was an updated cost estimate. And on page 2, I've got a breakdown of that. All-in costs with 2 new chemical buildings, the piping, the injection vaults, engineering, and land acquisition, we're at about a $4.1 million project. And knowing that that's maybe a little more than you want to bite off at this time, we came up with kind of a plan to tackle this in pieces. And there's some options there in the table to do so. The first one is what we originally planned in the right of way. It's about a $900,000 project. What we could do is install these injection vaults, get them out of the right of way, get some access into the sites like they should be, and leave the chemical buildings as they are at each of the sites. And also some valving improvements that are much needed with these entry points. That was about a $1.5 million price tag. And that would go all the way up to the $3.7 million construction for all improvements at both sites. I'm not saying we got to figure this out now, but TCEQ, I'm afraid, will not approve what we planned on doing without a design for the chemical buildings to get these chemicals separated. So the city's got a plan to get everything under regulatory compliance, right? So before we do anything, I've got to get these plans in front of TCEQ, the state, and they've got to approve them and comment on them. They've gotten really strict about chemicals due to the safety issues. So the recommendation was to put together a design for what the city wants to do that's going to serve its needs for the ultimate build out of both of these sites. Get some construction bids for the whole deal, as long as you've got the property to build it on, right? And when you got bids in hand, we'll set it up with some alternates so that you can pick what's most important based on the cost that you can build at the time.
What, as far as time frame, the sense of urgency, is it 6 months, is it a year, 2 years?
The injection vaults themselves are critical. You know, I think that's the concrete lines that these taps have been made on, and the chemical feeds. It's if we could have done that yesterday, that'd have been better, right? But, so just as quick as we can.
So there is a huge sense of urgency to
I believe there is.
get this done.
Yes. Big.
Jason, you know, when we just going, or when we're going over the budget over the past couple months, I think we budgeted about $1 million for this project. Is this just now coming up, this whole right-of-way issue and the safety concerns? Like, I guess, when did you find out, or
The right-of-way issue came up in August.
in August?
When we first looked at this a couple of years ago, we just planned on putting an injection vault like the city has back in the right of way. You know, as you guys know, what's happened with TxDOT in the last couple of years, expanding highways. So we've seen, I just hesitated to do that. Something else that steered us in this direction is when you get into this vault, if we put it in the right of way, you got to put a lid on it with the hatch on it. And to get a man down in that vault with these chemicals, that's a hazardous work environment. What we can do if we put it on private property with a fence around it is we can make an open top vault with a handrail around the top of the vault, so that when your staff is down in the vault working and there's a gas leak, you know, it would dissipate the fresh air. A much better work environment. We could get the top off this vault, get it out of the right of way. That was a big driver too.
Would that just get discovered over the past couple months, too?
I'm sorry.
That just get discovered over the past couple months as well?
That idea came out of the woodwork in August. Yeah, there's actually a visit to Kempton Water's plant. They've got one of their injection sites set up like that with an open vault.
I just
We couldn't do
going
that
from
right
$1 million
away.
to $4 million, just, you know, what to say.
Most of the $4 million is in those buildings, the chemical buildings. Yeah. That's a wild card. You know, these concrete block buildings are $750 a square foot, $500 a square foot. You know, they're small buildings, so we're not talking about a big economy of scale here. But you still got the roof and the foundation and the walls and the electrical and the exhaust fans and the doors and everything you have on a big building. So it's an expensive building.
Yes, sir.
So these are on our side, so this is all Lampasas, right?
Correct. And one of the biggest benefits of this project is the ability for the city to control flow between the Highway 190 and the Highway 580 side, and alternate your filling of your storage tanks, which is going to affect your water quality. Ultimately, we all know what happened in this past summer where we ran out of storage, right? If you can cycle those tanks and keep them full like they should be, and what happened this last event, and Bruce can speak to it also here, but that Georgetown tank had a set amount of water in it. It could have been a lot fuller, but it wasn't because of other issues we're trying to fix, so that would help here too. But if that tank were as full as it could be, and if there was a break on Kempner's side, instead of that tank doing this and backfeeding, it was flowing out of that tank at 4,000 gallons a minute. You guys lost, 2 days of storage in 4 hours probably. So this would prevent that from happening. It would allow you to fill that tank higher where it should be full. So when those events do happen, you've got more storage.
So it is gonna give us what I'm hearing is a little bit better efficiency
Yes.
with our city services that we provide. Is that right?
Sure would. And ultimately, there's another. So Georgetown is a 2 million gallon tank. That's a lot of water. There's another tank that's been sitting empty on the 580 side. It's called Hughley. It's another 2 million gallon tank. The city owns 100% of that capacity, but that tank's been empty for a decade. So if we can get the water quality fixed and get these tanks cycling like they should be, my hope is that one day we can get Hughley back into service. So when these events happen, you've got 3+ million gallons of storage.
Is that tank? Do we need to replace that tank?
No.
So it's still everything is still usable.
We've been in it, we've been inspected it. It needs a new coating
Okay.
and a rehabilitation, kind of like what you did on Georgetown a couple of years ago.
So how long has that tank been sitting empty? And is that the only other empty tank that we have?
Well, you've got a couple of empty tanks that are not usable. That tank's been sitting empty for a decade or so. I couldn't speak to that if anybody else knows. Yeah.
Well, I've been here for 12 years and it's been in operation maybe a year
Yeah.
old. And that's off
Van, have we had Little Hughley in service?
and on. Little Hughley is in service.
Is in service.
So how many tanks do we have right now that have water in them, and how many tanks do we own that are usable? Just out of curiosity.
You've got 3 usable storage reservoirs, or 4 actually. There's a Georgetown tank, it's 2 million gallons. And then in the upper pressure plane, you've got the golf ball.
Right.
That's a 200,000 gallon
Uh-huh.
tank, pretty small really. At a pump station that pumps up to the golf ball, there's a 250,000 gallon tank.
Where is that pump station?
That's down there by the creek on
By the
Spring
creek?
Street.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the Street
Mhm.
station that y'all talked about. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's 3.
Uh,
The 4th one that's been out of service for so long is they call it the Big Hughley.
the big Hughley?
There's 2 ground storage tanks on top of the hill off 580 that are outside of the city limits. They're actually in Kempner's service area.
But there are tanks.
You've got capacity in both of those. The biggest one, you've got 100% of the capacity in that. The city does.
So if we own the capacity, but it's like actually in the Kempner system?
Kempner owns and maintains that tank. But it hasn't been able to be used because of the water quality issues. You fill it up, another 2 million gallons of storage, we can't sustain that because you would lose the residuals.
And that's because we don't use enough water, that we would need that 3rd tank right now.
A little bit
as
of
we
both, you
grow-
don't use enough water, and also it's not able to be cycled like it should be. But we get these entry points working
And then we
back and
could.
forth, I think it would really help the cycling of these tanks so that we can keep fresh water in it.
Okay, and then that would help us with the growth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the more you grow, the more important that storage is going to be when you have an outage.
And in this injection site, that is Lampasas is 100%. We don't hear anything with Kentner.
Right. This number is 100% Lampasas.
Okay.
There are some things that Kentner probably wants to do as part of this project. We'll coordinate with them. They've got some valve improvements on their side. I think would be efficient to maybe tack on to this job.
So there could be
But I can't.
shared cost kind of along with this, is that?
I think it's a good idea. Yes, sir. There's some meters that need to be replaced and fixed, and
That's not involved in this 3.7 or 4.1 million.
no, sir, it's not in that number right now. No, that's something we would tackle during the design process, try and quantify.
If we do this 4.1 million, that brings the big Healy tank back into play. And you said we may be able to cycle. So May is not 100%. Will we?
No,
Will
to
we
get-
be able to cycle it or no?
This project won't guarantee you that you're going to get the big Hughley back in service. It's going to be up to this project plus some improvements on the Kempner side. A lot of things are going to have to come together to get the big Hughley back in service. This is one step to that. It's one important step.
But we can't cycle between the injection points on 580 and 190.
Right now, you cannot.
Is that with the problem?
Mhm.
That process will be able to cycle back.
Yes, yes, that's right. Mhm. Mhm. We're killing a lot of birds here with this, safety, water quality, obviously TCEQ regulations too. And not only employee safety, but your customer safety. The mixing apparatus that we're going to put in here is going to ensure that your water quality doesn't have too much chlorine in it, or chemical composition is right whenever your customers are getting water. An inline mixing, an inline injection is challenging, and it can be a little dangerous if you're not doing it right.
What's the timeline, Jason, for 1, 2, 3, and 4? So it'd be how long for 1, then? If we decided to go with 4 and had to come up with $4 million, how soon do we have to come up with $4 million? If we decide to go that way?
We're going to span multiple fiscal years on this. If you did the whole thing, no matter how you cut it,
Said multiple years?
multiple fiscal years.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
multiple
I see
fiscal
this as probably a total start to finish a 3-year effort.
Okay. We're going through 3 to 4 budget cycles.
At least 2 to 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir. And the way we'd like to set it up is to give you the ability to defer a couple $1 million and rebid it if you had to. But we can set the side up to build a piece of this and come back and build the rest later.
And if we were to skip to number 2, that obviously, does that include 1? I mean, if we did 2, is that a waste of money to go to 4, or is it each?
No, so the table, like number 3 is inclusive of number 1, right?
Okay.
Is how you should read this. And so there's injection vaults and chemical buildings at each of the sites. So we've got 2 injection vaults and 2 chemical buildings. And number 1 is simply to do the injection vaults on private property. And number 2 is to do everything, the whole project is only Highway 190 and not touch 580. 190 is you've got 2,000 gallons a minute flowing through 190 and 600 to 700 gallons a minute flowing through 580. So 75% of your water is coming through 190. That's the biggest priority. So option 2 is just leaving 580 alone.
These numbers, do they, back to the tank, Georgetown tank, is that, are these is that included in these?
The Georgetown tank.
Well, the tank you were talking about that's been
Big
set
Heatley.
empty?
No, there's no rehab cost for Big Heatley in these numbers.
Okay.
No, that was a separate project.
Any other questions? All right, we'll go on to the next item.
Okay. So I know you guys are interested to hear progress on this one, the local water supply alternative study. We've got a few talking points here. I'm going to try and squeeze this down into 15, 20 minutes or so and just tell you where we've come to a conclusion on. And last time we talked about this, you know, we had a groundwater study done, and as a reminder, this study was as much about eliminating options as it is about discovering new ones. So the local groundwater well option, while you could probably pump some wells, get 200 gallons a minute, maybe out of a couple of wells or one well that would supplement the city during times of these outages, it's just not a lot of water. And I don't know what the drought tolerance of these wells are going to be. You may have 200 gallons a minute in a wet year, and you know, much less than that during a dry year. So that is definitely a concern about spending that money. And so you've got currently a demand of 2 to 3 MGD in the city, and a 1 MGD groundwater supply would require 5 150 gallon a minute wells. And these have got to be permitted with groundwater district also. I don't think that would be as big of an issue because you would have to commit to not using these wells continuously. It would be an emergency use only type situation in order to get that.
And Jason, which, refresh my memory, which aquifers are we trying to tap into if we looking at that?
The Ellenberger San Saba would be the aquifer that we were recommending going into. There was 3 choices, and the Marble Falls is, I think, a little bit too drought intolerant. And the lowest one, the Hickory, is not going to be enough. The water quality won't be usable. So while it's not something to ignore, it's an old engineer told me once, it's like eating soup with a fork. You're just not going to get a lot. Okay. Really, where the focus is on this is a surface water plant on Sulphur Creek. That springs are producing enough to get a 3 MGD, million gallons per day plant during drought periods. The capacity there on that creek, which is significant. You could 100% live off that plant today if you had that plant. Okay, but it comes at a cost. That's the downfall. And these plants, 1 to 2 to 3 MGD, you know, are not very big plants, and so your cost for that footprint is going to be high, kind of like a small building. You've still got all the bells and whistles of a big plant, but you're coming on a small site. So all in, everything that goes from raw water to storage, you've got to dispose of brine, which we're going to have to run this water through an RO. Not 100% of the water, we're going to proposing to run about 25% of your stream through an RO. And it would be blended back together at the outlet plant. An RO takes out everything on the water, takes out 100% of the salt. And so the goal here is to produce water that's equivalent to what you're getting from Lake Stillhouse Hollow for your customers. So that's about 400 TDS, that was our goal, total dissolved solids. So it's a bit of a complicated plant, but the more we reduce that RO component, the less brine waste you're going to have to get rid of, and the better.
And that's that stuff you pump down to the ground, that brine.
That's one way to get rid of it. Desal plants on the coast are sending it back out into the ocean, and then, you know, dispersing it back out into the ocean. There's that. There's the deep well injection. You've got the benefit of a creek that you're discharging to at your wastewater plant that's got a really high background TDS. And you don't have a TDS limit in your permit. Some of the springs flowing into that creek have got 3,000 TDS flowing into them. So I think we can get by with blending that water at your wastewater plant and discharging it.
Without the creek.
You know, we go back to the creek, but you'd be blending it at the wastewater plant with the water that you're also pumping in from Lake Stillhouse Hollow on a regular basis. And so my math shows me I think we can make all that work. Of course, you have to get it permitted.
And that's basically what you're discharging is, as long as the TDS, what you're discharging back into the creek is less than the average TDS of the creek.
Right.
It'll work. It's no worse, yes.
It'll work as long as we're not making the creek worse.
Yeah.
And the reality is, for the last 30 years since you've been bringing Lake Stillhouse Hollow water in, that creek's been a lot better than it has been because your wastewater plant is putting in much higher quality water than what's in the creek.
Back to the wastewater, of course, goes back to Ajimoto. How much more stress do we put on our wastewater plant if we were to do that?
We're talking about blending it at the back end of your wastewater plant.
But that's more wastewater that the plant has to deal with. So how much more stress are we putting? Do we?
Oh, this is not a huge volume of water. It's just really high concentration of salts. Yeah, I mean we're talking about 5 to 10% at best of that plant's capacity. And it's something that would need to be done during times of drought. So what this RO component that produces the waste could be turned down or up based on the flows in the creek. Because that creek doesn't always have high TDS water in it. Whenever you've got a base flow coming from the runoff, the watershed, the TDS levels fluctuate where your intake is. So we could adjust that based on season drought.
You said the max 3 MGD during drought seasons, or
Yes, I wouldn't recommend building a bigger plant than that because it would be stranded.
sustain any growth?
It would be stranded capacity.
Would that be big enough to sustain any growth for the city?
Oh yeah, you've got enough water reserve from the Kentner water contract to sustain plenty of growth in the city. Eventually, you're going to outgrow that, but 20 years, 40 years, I couldn't tell you when that's going to be.
So if Kentner water's down for a week, this would sustain Lampasas.
Right, sure would.
Okay.
We could phase something like this in where you build a footprint for a 3 MGD and on day one the plant's got 1 MGD, and as you grow you could build more plant.
And the plant that costs 15 to 20 million.
Yes, that's kind of what we would expect based on construction bids we've had for similar membrane plants and the 1 MGD size that are expandable. And there's a lot in that number. That site is going to have to completely be redone, probably expanded too. So.
But what would the cost? What do you think the cost would be for a 3 MGD? Now this is a 1 MGD with a 3 footprint, right?
That's where you're going to get the most economy.
What
It's
if
probably
we just
about
went ahead and did
$10 a gallon if you built the whole thing. So about a $30 million effort. Obviously, the bigger you go, the more economy of scale you're going to get.
Right.
The downfall is you're going to have a plant there, but you're not going to be able to sell the water from. And so your cost per 1,000 is going to go up because you're not going to be selling 3 million gallons a day from that plant. You know? Very cognizant of that. There is an opportunity here. You've got some neighbors that would possibly be interested in purchasing some capacity in a plant like this and buying water, i.e. your neighbors to the north.
That's what I was wondering.
The courts. So I think it's worth having those discussions too. If you were to go forward with something like this, commit to providing them a half MGD or 1 MGD water supply out of the creek, they could supplement the cost of what it would take to build this plant.
To the tune of how much do you think, roughly, if we sold the courts?
Oh, I wouldn't sell it for anything less than it costs to build it. You know, whatever that capacity is. If it's a $20 million plant and you're going to give away half the capacity, I'd charge them $10 million. Absolutely.
They're in bad shape and they need water.
I can't speak to their
I know that
Lomita system, but
I didn't know how this is because I knew that they were having issues with quality.
they've made a lot of improvements. But there's a limit, obviously, to their Colorado River supply, and there's a lot of growth demand for their systems. So I think it's worth having the conversation.
If we're selling capacity, we have these water rights that are superior to quite, or they go back quite a ways. I mean, doesn't that shoot ourselves in the foot down the road if we get into any kind of emergency situation?
Well, if you only need, say, 1 MGD, if your supply, your reservoirs are full, and these are things we've all got to bet, right? If you need 1 MGD today, I wouldn't sell 1 MGD if you build a 1 MGD plant today. If you need 1 MGD today, and you could get away with selling one. Obviously, you build a 2 MGD plant and keep the one. So we need to vet that and figure out how much you can quote give away and not give away the farm.
Just thinking about like growth down the road. If
Yes, good
go
question.
south, out east.
There's no such thing as temporary water. So once you enter into a water supply contract, you've got to commit to that for the long term.
So it behooves us to vet potential partners when we're talking about this RO plant. Look at a 3 MGD plant and try to get Corex or whoever else to agree to buy so it offsets the cost for our citizens. And in the future, once everything's paid off, now we're making a profit. Right?
Sure.
Yeah, all the time, yeah. 99, it's probably a 99-year contract, right?
Yeah,
Typically,
I mean, it would be for all intents and purposes, permanent. But when these things happen, when mains break, when emergencies happen, that's what water restrictions are for. You know, everybody cuts demand, and you can get through long periods of time if you cut demand. That cost, just for comparison's sake, 5 to 7 is probably threefold what you're paying right now for water. 2 to 3-fold. So that puts that in perspective in terms of the value of the source that you've got right now.
What's the time frame on getting something like a 3 MGD up and going? With a couple of years or getting a plant?
Y'all know it would be first thing you want to do is to get these folks in here to do a pilot study on the creek, prove up their technology. That alone is probably a 6-month process at best. TCEQ's got to approve the treatment technology. It's got to be designed. You're probably 18 months out from even having a set of plans on the ground and contractor engaged. Another 2 years past that for construction. These are significant efforts. So I would think a budget 5 years, if it happens in 4, you're doing pretty good.
This may sound like a crazy idea, but rather than selling off capacity, I was thinking about mineral wells do something with some of their water supply where they start bottling it and selling it commercially like the actual city did. I know that's a crazy idea, but we're treating this healing water from the creek.
Yeah. Well, you can partner with industry to bring in a new, somebody. That's
I'm just thinking if it's an emergency situation, we're trying to figure out ways to pay for it without giving away something we have superior rights to. I don't know, just trying to do something outside the box.
Opportunity there for industry to maybe latch onto that, possibly. I'm thinking about Real Ale Brewery in Blanco. That's kind of their trademark is the Blanco River water, right?
Or get like Coca-Cola to come and start bottling.
Sure.
Okay.
There you go.
Healing power of Coca-Cola.
Like a ton of Topo Chico.
All right, what else you got for us, Jason?
All right. I wanted to speak to the importance of what you've got now and the need to maintain what you've got now. And we've spent some time with Kimber's engineer and with Central Texas engineer as part of this study. We visited both those plants. And really to me, the events that have happened over the last couple of years could have been prevented. It's a story of lack of maintenance, a lack of funds to do the things that need to be done. And that infrastructure that was put in from Lake Steelhouse Hollow to the city of Lampasas in the 80s is simply unattainable in today's dollars. It would be outrageous, and the cost of it would be honestly. So it'll last another 30 years. It'll last another 40 years, but it takes the attention to get that done. And I put a table in your packet here that you don't have to look at the detail, but the story that this table speaks is this is Lake Steelhouse Hollow from elevation-wise from when it's empty until where it's full, and how much volume it holds. And the feet low column there is whenever that lake is 107 feet low, it's empty, right? And at the end of that table, the second page, the conservation pool is at 622 feet. That's whenever it's full. That's where it's at about right now. And last summer, when we had so many problems with getting water into the treatment plants, the lake was 17 feet low, is 60% full. And so I'm a half glass full kind of guy, and that's not too bad. Your infrastructure on that lake should have the ability, and now it does because Kentner has done some improvements to its intake. But Central Texas is still struggling with its intake, doing those improvements. But the intakes on those plants can go all the way down to, in Central Texas case, about 36% capacity of that lake, or 33 feet low. When Kentner's intake was originally installed, the lowest intake was 43 feet below the full level on that lake, or 25%. They recently had to raise it because of siltation, and they raised it to, I don't have this on here, but that 584 mark, or about 30% of that lake. And so, you've got a reliable source on that lake, is what the story speaks to here. It's simply a matter of maintaining the infrastructure that was built so many years ago and not ignoring it. But that's the story I want to tell there. And those surface water plants are significant assets. So, okay. That's all I've got.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you. Appreciate it. Discussion regarding any items on the regular agenda. And with that, none being, we will ask for a motion to adjourn workshop session.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we will call our regular session to order. All rise.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight to discuss all the issues and opportunities of this great community. We ask that you be with everyone, both sides of the podium, both sides of the room, and that we can make some good decisions and exchange some good information. We're grateful to be here. We ask that you watch over us, forgive us of our sins, and be with us till we can meet again. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honoring the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
I don't think we have any presentations or proclamations this evening. Citizens' comment. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The city council may not deliberate on items presented underneath this agenda item. And there is none. 1.2, citizens' comment. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is included in on the agenda may do so at this time, and there is none there. Public hearing to receive citizens' comment on rescinding ordinance 39.5 and 607 and 783 regarding swimming and fishing in Sulphur Creek.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At the September 23rd meeting, Council directed staff to update signage and ordinances related to prohibiting swimming and fishing in Sulphur Creek. The creek is a navigable waterway and known by the state of Texas, which makes the ordinances hard to enforce. Staff worked closely with TML Risk School, State of Texas, and City Attorney for guidance and best practices. While the city is repealing the ordinances, the city takes a neutral stance and will not promote nor prevent activities at the creek unless it becomes a law enforcement issue. All activities will be done at one's own risk. So I'm just going to open this public hearing for anybody who has any questions or comments about what we want to do. But these are the ordinances that were in place, and some of them amended or modified over the years, but they're way back in the 70s.
Which is the ordinance that was talking about the golf course and prohibiting swimming on the golf course? Because that one we had talked about leaving.
I'm sorry?
That one we had talked about leaving.
Well, it needs to be reworded if we want to do something different, because these are all prohibiting the fishing and the swimming. So if there's something to be modified for the golf course, that'll be a separate issue later. Not with
Are any
this.
of these three pertaining to the golf course?
Pertaining to, absolutely, because they all will include the creek that goes in front of the golf course. That the way that they're worded, they will not be able to be maintained in the way that they are today. They'll have to be removed, and we'll have to create a new one that fits the needs of what the golf course needs.
So we can't protect the golf course without removing these first.
So, if I can, just real quick, the only thing that would be enforceable on the golf course and advisable would be to create an ordinance that says or restricts or prohibits bank fishing. But you can't restrict or prohibit someone getting in the water. If they're going through there in a boat or wading or swimming, they're well within their rights.
Are they within their rights to be on the golf course without paying for the golf course and getting in?
No, that's the ordinance that would need to be put in place, and I've talked to Chris and Warren about it, we'll probably be putting something together.
Some sort of entry or exit from the creek to the golf course.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
we can certainly prohibit that, yes. Yes,
But if they come down the creek from upstream.
if they get in at the low water crossing at Naruna, they're well within their rights. But you can't get on the bank. Or, that's what the ordinance should probably read.
But we can't do anything until these three are, like, that can't be
Correct.
put in. But that's something that I definitely talked about, that we wanted to make sure that was done.
Yes.
Why don't we leave these three in place until that ordinance is written and then rescind these three? Because
What you, even if you leave these in place, they're not enforceable. So,
These ordinances are unenforceable.
And they're very hard.
Get rid of, repeal what's on there, and then go back and create new.
It's much better to create something that is modern and it fits the needs of today versus what happened back in the 70s and 80s.
how soon will that be written? Great.
I don't have a time for you, but it'll be something that we'll work on.
Just because we can't enforce the old ones, like they're unenforceable.
I don't think we should have a timeline or get the new one enforced ASAP, 30 days.
I think it's good.
No problem. December.
Or maybe
Sure.
a
It'll probably
approach
be
the next
January.
meeting.
It'll probably be January before we get that, but we can work on it for sure. We'll only have one meeting in December.
It probably,
Nobody's gonna be swimming in December.
and it probably wouldn't be advisable to fish on the banks of the golf course. It's
No.
Yeah. Especially on golf.
a true story.
Okay. Two point one, discussion and possible action concerning approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on October the 28th, 2024.
I didn't see any corrections, recommend approval.
Second. All in favor? Consent agenda, discussion and possible action regarding the purchase and charges in excess of $4,000 from October the 1st, 2024 to October the 31st, 2024.
Move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? City manager's operational report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a few brief comments on the memo that's included in your packet. Wanted to let you know about some promotions recently in the police department. Chief Cummings' police report was after retirement of Timmy Ryan. Patrol Sergeant Larry Wilson was offered and accepted the position of Sergeant Investigator to backfill from Larry Wilson's previous position. Patrol Officer John Reinhardt has been promoted to the position of Patrol Sergeant. Officer Wilson is currently in his 13th year of service to the city, and Officer Reinhardt brings over 19 years of experience from the city of Killeen and Lampasas County. Water Alliance staff did attend the Water Alliance meeting in Belton last Friday. It was an informational meeting on an effort kind of spearheaded by County Judge David Blackburn as a means to advocate for additional water capacity and solutions initially for Bell and Coryell County. Judge Hoyer also attended and has expressed his interest in participating in that. Currently, they are going to be seeking legislation authorizing the entity in the next session, and just a lot of questions. It's interesting how it might evolve, but I think if it does anything to advocate for increased resiliency and capacity in Central Texas, I think we should be a part of it, and I'm pleased that Judge Hoyer is as well. Hostess House, we have stayed in close contact with our design and construction consultants, the Reliance Architect. I have included, I believe, at your place on the dais, kind of a summary sheet of, it's not 9 change orders, it's actually 4 change orders with 9 proposal requests that were submitted. Some of these I've kind of touched on previously, and certainly there's some additional detail behind this summary page, but they represent credits and costs for changes beginning with PR number 1. They included the amount for permits, and we waived permits, of course, so we got a credit for that. For out of wall, I think maybe Kaylee also put some pictures in there, but they found some very interesting framing. It's like a frame on top of a frame with diagonal members going through it that made it hard to install some of the MEP items. So that was a result of some of the fur outs, and I think you got a picture of a couple of those fur outs that they had to do. Structural revisions, we had modifications, credits, and costs for structural revisions. Also, as part of change order 2, I believe that it also included a credit for a reduction in grease trap size as well as a lighting credit. Change order 3 included credit, $10,000 credit for a revised lighting layout. Ceiling, they needed a little bit more room to run MEP through the ceiling. And then also the new disconnect that I reported to you at a previous meeting. And I also, when I followed up, I also did discuss this with Councilman Hernandez in terms of the plan specified at certain intervals a power study to make sure that there was adequate flow and current and sizing of the new disconnect, as well as down below electrical power upgrades in PR number 6, change order number 4. Structural revisions, we've talked about that as well in terms of rot. You got a picture of probably the most significant rot, which is in the northeast corner of the building, and up above it was a big HVAC unit, and if it got behind the wall, you never would have known that it was leaking from that area. Some of those HVAC units were also packed into those spaces. I mean, it's almost like they built the wall around them. They put them there and built the wall around them, so probably not the best and most serviceable location. The fire department did request a source connection on the FBC rather than the 2.5-inch Ys. That was a very minor change. There are some sheetrock upgrades that I think were appropriate. Everything behind the walls is, particularly on the rock, is not insulated. There's no moisture barrier. And so the upgrade, about $7,000, was for the addition of a Type X moisture resistant drywall. We're obviously not going to peel off all that rock, put sheathing on it, insulate it, moisture barrier, etc. They also did find that there was some infestation in some of the insulation that was in the ceiling. They're going to replace that insulation. And I think that's about it. The one thing I also want to point out is at the very bottom box of that top page, you have an original contract amount of 2.2, and then new contract amount with change order balance 2.3. Just to be clear, you cannot charge us you cannot charge us twice. So you cannot charge us for the change order and also include a $105,000 allowance. So Kimberly is having them redo that so that the contract amount will remain the same, at least for the next $14,601. The other thing I think I would really encourage council to do is, if there is a time here in the next week or so, I think we'd love to walk you through that building and kind of see the scope and the extent of the work that's being done there. I know there is concern about change orders. I feel comfortable that, I think the worst is probably past because we've got the walls open, we've got the MEP working. They will begin framing to the elevator shaft. If you've driven by recently, the elevator shaft is up. Monday, Tuesday, we'll start framing out to the east to marry up to that. So it's a big project, and I think it would provide some very good perspective to do a walkthrough with Anthony or Mike Blair or whomever. But stakeholders meeting, that is just as a reminder, tomorrow night. I know I had to send out a little clarification on the format, but regardless of who shows up, we're going to have a good discussion on what's going on in Lampasas and what's going on with the entities and organizations and how we can better help each other in terms of providing resources and communicating to our public. That's all I have unless you have any questions.
I got a question for you, Finley.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to let this go by, but is this your last council meeting?
Hi. I don't know how to address you, so I'm just gonna. What I've learned in 30 years from him is the older he gets, the more emotional he gets, and I'm the one who's gotta suck it up and be the big girl, but sometimes it doesn't work, but here it is. Thank you. There are no words to adequately tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity and support given to me by the city. It's been a good ride. I knew Lampasas would be an outstanding opportunity the day I was walking the taxiway of the Llano Airport with a contractor from Lampasas, and I asked him about the job at council. He stopped, squared his shoulders, and said, Lampasas would be lucky to have someone like you. To Robert Lansford, I say now, I was the lucky one. I will not miss sitting in the chair, but I will miss my interactions with my staff family. The firefighters stopping in, parks crews visiting the plumbers while they're waist deep in water, sitting in dispatch, hearing about library programs, talking to IT about football in high school, the electric crew dropping in, all of our staff. They have, everyone, made me look better than I am. I believe a lot has been accomplished in the last 12 years. The city has protected our water contracts, survived Winter Storm Uri and COVID, maintained a robust capital program, adding capacities, facilities, and paving, and also adding to our parks. Our staff have been good stewards of our assets, and so have our elected officials. Many have expressed thanks to me, but again, thanks goes to the staff and elected officials. There are 3 compliments I will remember as much as any. On sensitive communication, council is asked to review my letters before I send them out. 1, to see if they are too strong, and 2, to let them know before the other party receives the correspondence. In one instance, Zach Morris lifted his head up from reading, smiled, and said, "This is gangster." I knew it was a good letter. Ronnie Witcher and I visited a lot of Wednesday mornings about the city and life in general. He occasionally would pester me about something, taxes, the turn lane into Ace Hardware, or the need for help for downtown businesses. He did let me know one time that, quote, "I was the best city manager Lampasas has had," end quote. And had he stopped there, I would have been satisfied, but he continued, "At not stuttering when you're giving me a bullshit answer." And 7.5 hours into a deposition on our water contract, Leah Rain, attorney for Kempner, who was a little flustered she was not able to harvest anything useful for her client, just said, "You've obviously prepared well." The city has successfully defended its position in 2 litigations, one carried to the Court of Appeals and one to the Supreme Court of Texas, and has also had to defend 5 separate claims to the Public Utility Commission related to our water contracts. This is my 29th year working for cities. I have served under 10 mayors, hundreds of elected officials and appointed officials, and was fortunate to find my way back to Texas after 19 years out of state. Thank you for providing for me and my family and providing one of the best experiences any city manager in Texas could have.
And I don't think that's gonna be the last time we're gonna be in this room. But I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Of my tenure of being on the council and serving as mayor. Emily, it's been a privilege. Thank you. Seven point one, discussion possible action regarding our website photo contest.
Make a motion to submit entry number 2 as the photo winner contest winner.
Do I have a second?
Guess I'll make the motion 3, 2, 1.
I'll second motion for entry number 1.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for number 2. Oh, that didn't get a second. Okay, all right. So do we have a second on number 1?
We have a first and a second.
First and second.
All right.
Is that good?
Yes, for number 1.
I made it as number 1.
That's it.
Charlie seconded it. All in
Yeah, I was gonna say discussion wise, we've been talking water, so.
Okay, all in favor?
Sorry, Miles.
7.2, discussion possible action regarding the award, excuse me, of a bid from Hope Power System in the amount of $319,000 and $460 for a standby emergency generator, utilizing the CARES Act funding and wastewater operational fund.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. How are y'all doing tonight? The item in front of you is the purchase only of 3 emergency standby generators. One will be located at the Spring Street water pump station, the other at the wastewater treatment plant office. and the third at the wastewater treatment plant treatment works facility. This is kind of a culmination of a 4-year project. After Winter Storm Uri, the EPA and TCEQ came in and basically stated that all water systems across the state of Texas mandated to have emergency backup power at all their facilities. So we did a little research, talked to TCEQ a little bit more, and they said, well, don't stop there because the next mandate will be the wastewater treatment plant. So by utilizing the CARES fund that came out through COVID, we chased after these generators and located them and bringing it to you tonight for approval to purchase these generators. And following budget 24-25 fiscal year, we will move into the installation phase of it.
So this 32,000, it was in your budget, the overage that we're paying out of.
Yes, yes, sir, it is.
Alright, I move to approve a bid from Holt Cat Power Systems via Bybor, contract number 515-16, for 30 new diesel-powered standby generators in the amount not to exceed $319,460, and authorize the city manager to execute all related documents.
Second.
So there's 2 generators going in as well, like one fire department and one at the animal shelter, is that correct?
No, we've cut the one at the animal shelter
Oh,
for funding purposes.
okay. That's the first I've heard of it. So,
Yeah, at the beginning there were 4, yes.
okay. So does this take away at all from there at the fire station or money that was designated towards that CARES Act?
No, we use some of that for the engine,
Okay.
as well as, and the fire department already has their own generator, the Generac there.
This says procurement funding will be discussed in the meeting along with maintenance, schedule, testing, operation, and
Yes,
setting. How much is all that going to cost?
it'll be a maintenance agreement once everything is purchased,
What about
and it'll be a separate purchase altogether.
what about the installation? How much is that going to cost?
Once we get the 3 in, and that's why I'm moving to a second budget cycle to do this, because they probably won't be here before then. There's one sitting on the ground in San Antonio 4 months ago. It's probably gone by now. They're going to have to build the one for the wastewater treatment plant. That's 36 to 40 months out. The timetable that we're up against is the CARES Act funding. All of those invoices and all the paperwork has to be filed and turned in at the end of this calendar year. That's the deadline that we're under right now.
And if we get it before,
Sir?
if we get it before, no, if we get the generators before, then what? We don't have the money for the installation.
No,
It's contracts and stuff, right?
the money, the installation is going to come out of operating funds that I come back to you and request for the next 2 or 3 budget cycles. Okay,
We have a motion.
we get a second.
There was a second. I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank y'all.
7.3, discussion of possible action to consider approval of the hazardous migration mitigation or action plan update or resolution.
Mayor, council, the Lampasas County Hazardous Mitigation Plan is approvable pending adoption by FEMA. The next step is for participating jurisdictions to adopt the plan by resolution. Once the resolution is signed, it will be forwarded to TDM by the outreach coordinator to request final FEMA approval letter. I'm asking you to consider a motion to approve the Hazardous Mitigation Action Plan update by resolution as the next step in getting the final approval letter from FEMA.
So moved.
Any discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Discussion and possible action to purchase 100 LED streetlights at a discount approval rate from Tech Line Incorporated in the amount of $25,500.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Seeking to purchase 100 streetlights for the yearly amount that I foresee us changing out. By purchasing this way, we get about a 5% discount from $268 to $255.
Move to approve the purchase of 100 LED streetlights and Tech Line Inc. By board measure in the amount of $25,500. Second.
I just had a quick question, because I'm sure they are. All the lights that we're buying now are dark bright skies friendly, correct?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
We have, I have 100 scheduled for this year. It's about how many we change out a year. There's about 200, rough count, about 200, 250 left to complete the change out of this overlap of the cities. So next year, the project should be complete.
That's exciting. Thank you.
Was this 25,000 in your budget for this year?
Yes. It's just a savings by committing to purchase them all at once. And we don't even have to pay for them all at once. Commit to the 100 for the year, I get the discount, we pay for the 25 when I order them, and then the PO stays open until it takes.
Seems like a good find. Good job.
Yeah.
So,
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
thank you.
Discussion and possible action regarding rescinding ordinance 395, 607, 783 regarding swimming and fishing in Salter Creek.
Move to approve first and final reading of the ordinance to repeal ordinance 395, 607, and 783 prohibiting swimming and fishing in Sulphur Creek.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Hold on.
Hold on.
Sorry, just really quick. I just want to make sure that we're going to get the ordinance to protect the golf course in by the first meeting in January.
I can't guarantee that. That'll be up to y'all and Chris Moore. I mean, Chris Moore will have to work with Becky and.
Staff need to direct Chris to get us some language, staff work on it, let's come back and either next meeting or in December if we can, we'll talk about it, if we can't, we'll do it in January.
Sounds good.
And I will say, I had our PML rep come down to the location and do a site visit. He loosely recommended that we don't do anything with signage. You know, we talked about swimming your own risk, no lifeguard on duty. He said, you don't have to do that. Once they leave any property and enter that water, they're on state property.
Don't assume that we have liability there.
The only thing that we will have is signs on our walk bridges, no jumping or diving from the bridge.
And that's based on TML's recommendation.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 7.6, discussion and possible action concerning the approval of bid from Toyota of Cedar Park in the amount of $43,510 for a Toyota 2024 Tacoma SR5 four-wheel drive to replace a 2000 F-250 pickup for a civil building inspector. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We're in dire need of replacing the truck that Mike Blair currently drives. It's kind of like the Memphis Belle, barely making it in every day. Got a lot of maintenance issues with it. It's cost prohibitive to bring it back into service when you can purchase another vehicle.
Move to approve the bid of $43,510.77 from Toyota Cedar Park for the purchase of a 2024 work truck and authorize city manager to execute all related documents.
Second.
You didn't trade the other one in? You're gonna put it on?
We're going to send it out for war bonds. It's truck is 24 years old.
I just have to ask, why are we buying a Toyota? It's the first time I've seen a Toyota on here.
Second time. So Dan's new truck was.
Frank, was this 43,000? Was it in your budget this year?
No, that didn't make it in the budget cycle. We discussed it, but it was cut before, and this just kind of got expedited due to the maintenance issues that came about.
So where is the money coming from? That's 43,000.
30,000.
Yeah,
We're gonna take money from the budgeted in their budget. And Wayne was nice enough to say he could wait another year, so we'll move money from electric over to cover.
Wayne's good at saving money too. Top notch, man.
Why did we not get quotes from our local dealerships?
There are no Toyota dealerships in town.
That's my
We were looking for, we were looking specifically for a Toyota truck. We did look for, since we're buying a used vehicle, this one has 5,000 miles on it. We searched the inventory, there wasn't anything comparable to it on the lots in town.
So why are we looking for a Toyota?
Specifically why? Durability, one, clearance, kind of fits for, it's a mid-size truck now, the Tacoma is, this isn't a full-size Thunder truck, but it just kind of works out best for what we're using it for.
We have a motion first and second.
So this will replace an F-250, which is a 3/4 ton?
Yes,
It's like
sir, that's
a
correct.
5/8. It's like a 5/8, and it's gonna be heavy enough to replace a 3/4
Well,
ton?
we didn't actually use it as a 3/4 ton, what we used, that truck's actually been handed through several different departments, and we just kind of got it on the hand-me-down program, and it's the two-wheel drive G10 engine.
Do you haul anything with it?
To the gas station.
Right, but do you haul anything with it?
No, sir.
Okay, so the Tacoma will be just.
No, the Tacoma is basically going to be for the ground clearance and for the ability to be able to get around job site. Hopefully a little bit easier than maneuvering a 3/4 ton truck. And it was just more cost effective due to the options offered. We got a lot better deal getting a used truck with more options for a little bit of savings as well.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 7.7, discussion and possible action regarding the purchase and installation services. Labor for fiber build out at the 580 Sports Complex in the amount of $16,031.33.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. In your packet, you will find an excellent proposal as well as some vandalism pictures from the 580 Sports Complex. Back in 2015, discussions began in City Council regarding the need to install security cameras in various city locations throughout the city in order to prevent vandalism, theft, illegal dumping, and graffiti that was frequently occurring. After speaking with staff and City Council, the 580 Sports Complex is a location that staff and City Council identified as a need based off of the amount of vandalism that is frequently occurring. Currently, the only internet service out at 580 Sports Complex is provided by NextLink as a wireless plan with up to 35/7 megabytes per second speeds for $59 a month. Based off the number of security cameras and the type of cameras needed to cover all areas of the 580 Sports Complex, a structured fiber connection with bandwidth speeds up to 200/200 megabytes per second is needed at a minimum. If structured fiber is installed, NextLink will be able to offer speeds up to 300/300 for $69 a month or 500/500 megabytes per second for $109.95 per month. If awarded, NextLink indicates that the estimated time of completion of the project would be March of 2025 due to the 60 to 90 days of time needed to get TxDOT permitting. This is an unbudgeted project, however, funds are available from the monies that have not been utilized in salary and benefits for the parks facilities, new hire position, and the open position of ACM. I have the Parks Director Chris Iker here to speak on behalf of the vandalism that's occurring out at 580. If you have questions for him.
So if it's coming under budget for salary, maybe it's for that new position, is that you're gonna have to hold off on that new position?
No.
Okay.
No.
How does that work out monthly?
Well, because of the, since we started October 1st, it hasn't been filled since then. So you're gonna have that money savings right there until the new person starts. And then with the ACM being opening and not really for sure when we're gonna get that one filled, you're saving that salary every 2
Just
weeks.
a couple months, we'll probably have it.
For sure.
I move to approve the award and quote to NextLink in the amount of $16,031.33.
Second.
I think this is great. I think we also need to look at a new camera or additional cameras at Campbell Park too.
We are currently.
Yeah, because you can't see that whole park either.
Right.
Is this gonna keep the bikes off the horse trails?
Is it gonna do what?
Keep the bikes off the horse trails?
The bikes off the horse trails?
I mean, the horses off the bike trails.
Yeah, whatever. I'm not getting in that fight. You'll have to call Chris Harrison for that.
We have a first and a second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion?